Hello, welcome to another week of the Academy of Shem and Aver. I am Rabbi Katz, and this is our 17th installment. Let's go ahead and get inside. What are we talking about this week? This week is essentially part 2 of last week's part 1. Now, for the last 15 weeks, we were engaging and delving into Shem and Noah primarily. Last week we took a bit of a different turn, and we began to understand and explore the life of Jethro. The most basic understanding that we had of Jethro and why we're bringing him into a Noahide Academy of Shem Noah perspective or light is that essentially we're following a model. And the model works as this: that there's oftentimes a misconception that can lead to a greater revelation. You ask yourselves, who is the first Jew? You really should give me 2 answers. And the first answer would be Abraham. That's like the classic answer, right? And then you can say at the Sinai revelation, when the Torah became bound within man, that Moses became essentially the first law-abiding Jew. And we're going to use that model to explain the Noahides as well. Who was the first Noahide? That's our basic question. And the answer we would come to would be Shem. Shem would be the first real righteous son of the righteous. And who was the righteous that he was the son of? Noah. And Noah inherited the laws. Even though they existed before Noah, Noah inherits the name of the laws. Noah thereby is the fulfillment of the laws. And Shem is the son of righteousness, who is of righteousness, who fulfills the 7 laws. He essentially becomes the first Noahide. Because a Noahide really isn't just somebody who's obligated in the 7 laws of Noah. A Noahide is somebody who is following the 7 laws of Noah. Someone who is successfully following the 7 laws of Noah. That's a true Noahide. And we're going to get into what a Noahide is made of in this week and in weeks to come. So Shem is your personification. He's the one that has all the requirements. He's a true Noahide, a true son of Noah. But that was pre-Sinai. And we know one major law, that the law was given at Sinai, both for the Noahides and for the Jews as well. 613 commandments for the Jews, 7 laws for Noah, 620 in total. Gematria or numerical value 620 is crown or keter, the highest level of creation. That the law was given at Sinai, and the world is governed by law based on free will choice. Thus, who was the Noahide representative at Sinai? And the answer to that question is Jethro. Jethro is the first Sinai law-based Noahide. So again, there's the pre-Sinai, which is composed of people who are doing what they have to do, but it's not really from law. It's because that's what they do. Abraham, he sought to fulfill the Torah. Shem sought to fulfill the Torah. And at Sinai, it becomes bound on you, it becomes activated upon mankind. And the two representatives of that experience then would be Moses and Jethro. Now, let's take a sidestep here. So last week we covered the introduction to Jethro, who he was, his names, why we're talking about Jethro, and all that we covered just now. Basically, we got to last week. I believe also last week we talked about the kind deeds and the Torah study that would essentially relieve a person from the trials and travails of the end war, or the birth pangs of the Messiah, Chevlei HaMashiach. And Shem and Abraham and the bread and wine and the Torah represented brought out that secret to us. Now, from the kind deeds in Torah, we're going to go in a bit of a different direction. We're going to bring it to Sinai. So we had the kind deeds in Torah of Shem, Melchizedek, and Abraham, the pre-Sinai Jew-Noahide relationship, which, as we said, it was a point in time, and what comes out of them is a tekufa, or time period. The time period would be a lifestyle of how to be holy, spiritual, and saved from the evil of the world. And we come to Sinai, we get the commandments of the Torah. And instead of just saying representation of Torah, we should start to say the keeping of the Torah. And when we start to say the kind deeds, Gemilas Chosadim, the bestowal of kind deeds, which is the gematria of Torah, 611, don't say that. Rather say that the kind deeds are enclosed in the commandments, in the mitzvahs. Thus we have a Sinai revelation extension from Shem and Abraham into Moses and Jethro. Thus, out of Jethro and Moses, when we have the mitzvahs and the Torah, when we really connect to the study of that Torah and the inherent kindness and the kind deeds that come from the commandments, that's going to be the aspects of good in the physical and the spiritual that ground us in reality. So when the world is turbulent and change into the Messianic era, where the Torah and the commandments will be in their natural environment, one is then saved from the birth pangs of Mashiach, or in any generation that we dwell in, if we're not even close, but we think we are. If we're not close, then wherever you are, that's how we ground ourselves in truth. Now, we know that there's a lot of parallel truth and lateral thinking. Most times, let's say 95% of the time, we get a strong coincidence. You can bet that there's probably a teaching or learning experience possible. Thus, we have 7 names of Jethro, and with the Vilna Gaon, who was a rabbi of around the year 1700, who suggested that every person should have about 7 names, at least. For example, let's count my 7 names. My name is David Pesach ben Leib HaKohen, that's 1. David Pesach ben Miriam Rachel, that's 2. David, that's 3. David Katz, that's 4. Ben Leib ben Miriam Rachel, that's 6. And then my grandparents, that's 7. You don't have to have all 7, but it's a rounded number that there's a concept of having 7 names. We're going to get into Jethro and his 7 names momentarily. Now, when we talk about, let's say, the number 7, numbers in Torah are not coincidental. When we say that there's 5, or when we say that there's 7, the idea is to elevate these numbers into a higher intellect. They're small numbers, so by nature they're of small intellect. Just 7 names. And we want to elevate into really a fractal of where the 7 names fit. And it was suggested that the 7 names of Jethro correspond to the 7 midot, or the 7 spheres, or the 7 attributes, or the 7 traits that are found in the higher realm of Kabbalah. And I went ahead and I suggested to myself actually 8, because Jethro essentially has 7 names and a quasi-8th name, which fits also perfect into Kabbalah, that's why I went ahead with it. Anyone who has a background in Kabbalah, by the way, we're going to start an introduction to Kabbalah class when the new website is launched in April. So here's a pre-intro intro. Basically, what you have, there's four. Let's just give a real quick crash course into what we're talking about. And by the way, when you don't, if you don't understand the concepts that we're bringing down, you're going to find that with a little bit of review, I repeat the same things over and over and over again. So if anything sounds complex or complicated to grasp, don't hesitate to download the archive classes, listen to it again, study, and you're going to find that I repeat the same things over and over again. For example, how many times have I talked about the sefirot, or the emanations, or the worlds? So the Torah really is it's infinite, but the concepts are finite. They recycle often. So anything that was missed, don't hesitate to do review work, because the concepts are there, and they are in repetition. So there are essentially four worlds that we'll discuss. There's this world, the world of doing, which is called Asiya. Asiya means doing. That's the world of action. That's where we are now. And then there's an angelic realm, which is the world of Yetzirah, where the heavenly Jerusalem is, the heavenly temple. It's an angelic realm, Yetzirah, which means the world of creation. And then there's Bria, yet another term for creation. And Bria is a little bit more opaque in what it is. It's the future world to come being prepared. There's a lot of service there. It's a little unclear what happens there. And then what we have is the world of Atzilus. The world of Atzilus is the world of emanation. The world of emanation where the 10 sefirot dwell. Sefirot are the attributes of God. There are 10 attributes to God. And I would consider it to be like a chemistry experiment. That when God emanates into this world, and we're using the word emanates, it basically comes through an admixture of the sefirot through the worlds, and then what we have is our physical reality. And our reality has a klippa, a shell, that we see what we see. But if you really get into the dynamic of conceptual reality, what Shem's Torah comes from that level. That Shem saw the physical world, and in the physical world you can identify how it relates to godliness. And the world of Atzilus, or emanation, really is the world of godliness, where everything is godly. Now, there are 10 emanations there. What are the 10 emanations? Crown, Keter, wisdom, Chachma, understanding, Bina, Chesed, kindness, Gevura, might, Tiferet, harmony or beauty, Netzach, victory, Hod, majesty, Yesod, foundation, Malchus, kingship. Now those titles should mean absolutely nothing to you, because they're absolutely meaningless. To identify the nature of the world of emanation is not to dwell on the title of the emanation, but really to learn the dynamic. Here's a simple dose of the dynamic. The simple dose would be the wisdom, chachma, and bina, understanding. When they unite, there's a dynamic. The concept of the masculine and the feminine, as wisdom is the masculine and understanding is the feminine, they unite in harmony, such as a marriage, and they produce knowledge. So what does the Torah say by Adam and Eve? Adam yada es Chava. Adam knew his wife. Adam knew Eve. And he uses the word knew, which is the word usage of knowing. So when the Torah tells you then that when wisdom and understanding come together, i.e. man and woman, there is a certain knowledge that comes out of it. And thus you have your 11th quasi aspect. There's an 11th quasi called das, or knowledge. Here's another example of a dynamic. Chesed, kindness. Let's call that the positive side. And Gevura, might, which is, let's say, the negative side, positive and the negative, and Tiferet is harmony. Why is it called harmony? Because it unites the positive and the negative, and it creates a matrimony between the two. And then the Torah will go on to say that matrimony is actually a rachmim, it's a mercy. It's not judgment, and it's not just free giving, it's in the middle, the middle way. This is why Jacob represents the attribute of Tiferet, or harmony, as he represents the truth, and the way the Torah teaches us, the truth is the middle way. So you see that you use the emanations, the 10 traits, to really identify reality. And it becomes really a magnifying glass of how to view and judge reality. And you can use the model in many, many ways. And when sfirot or emanations come together, this is called partsufim, personifications. And when personification means when 2 or more of the 10 traits or 11 traits are put together, we can have an image and view what the Torah really is in a deeper spiritual level. Now, we say that there's really 2 halves of the model. This is called the tree of life, Etz Chaim. There's the crown, wisdom and understanding. That's called the upper tier, the first tier. And then that's the intellect. And then what we have is when we come down into the traits, there's 7 midot, 7 characteristics, which are, again, kindness, might, harmony, victory, majesty, foundation, kingship. When we view those 7 levels, they become traits. And there's, again, a quasi-8th, which is knowledge. Knowledge has an aspect of above in the intellect, in the wisdom and understanding aspect, and the traits. That is your crash course on Kabbalah, of the world of Atzilus. Now, it was brought to my attention, Jethro has 7 names. So can we, in fact, link Jethro's 7 names to the 7 traits? Because oftentimes we separate the upper 3 emanations with the 7 lower emanations. And this corresponds very good as well to Noahides. As there's 7 laws of Noah, and we have the 7 midot, and you can say that the commandments of the Torah are the 7 traits, and the Torah aspects of the Torah are the upper intellect. Thus the Torah would have an intellect, the knowledge level would be the neck connecting to the head, and the body would be the traits, representation by the traits, or midot. So you see how in Torah, when you get an open thread, Jethro's 7 names and the 7 traits, then the whole picture opens up. You have the 7 laws of Noah, the 7 traits. Thus the laws would be the body, and the head would be the Torah, and if it's good that the head is the Torah, because the intellect is the upper 3 emanations. Without further ado, let's go ahead and suggest, this is my rendition to the best of my knowledge, how we can relate the 7 names of Jethro to 7 traits. Ready to go? I'm not absolutely positive but this is the best way I can work it out. Anybody that has an alternative interpretation, please email me, let me know, suggest it, ask anyone that might know more. There probably are multiple scenarios or definitions, but here's my attempt at basically at identifying the 7 names to the traits. Here we go. So we have Choten Moshe, the father-in-law of Moses. Now Moses corresponds to the attribute of das, or knowledge. So I think the best thing we could do is offer an explanation that the father-in-law of Moses would be a higher aspect to knowledge. So I think we could say that das, or knowledge, would be the father-in-law of Moses. Now let's go down to kindness, chesed. Putiel, As we know that Putiel is one of the names of Jethro. And why is he called Putiel? Let's go inside the Midrash. I don't think it says the reason why. But one of his names is Putiel. Okay. So Putiel is Puti Kale, the smaller god. The reason why we call it the smaller god, we know that Shem is a priest to God above, and if you think back to our previous lectures, to God is a verb. He was a priest to God above. To God is a verb, meaning he was pushing godly traits, or using godly names above, Shem was. And Jacob is called a god below, that he was evoking God below. Thus, when we have the name Putiel, it means Puti is the smaller Kale, or God. The name of Kale, God, is the level of supernal kindness. Thus, the Puti Kale would be the smaller kindness. So I think Chesed, or kindness, would be Putiel. And then we have Cani, which is a Canaanite. Not a Canaanite, but a Canaanite, like Cain. And Cain, as we know in Kabbalah, corresponds to Gevura, or might. So I think we could put Cani at Gevura. Chever at Tiferes, beauty or harmony. Why are we calling it Chever? Chever means to join. Thus, what we're saying is that the left and the right, the kindness and the strength, can unite in the middle, and they are united or joined. And then we have Netzach, victory. Re'uel, the friend of God. As again, there's the word Kale, or kindness, but here it's on the right side under the level of kindness, which is Netzach. This was the level of Moses. He came from that sphera or emanation. Thus we could say, and Moses was called a shepherd, so don't read it as the friend of God, read it as the shepherd of God. So then you could say the right side Netzach, and then we have Hod, the attribute of splendor, which is Chovev, beloved. And he's named Chovev because he loved the Torah. And the love of Torah really is coming from understanding the Torah, which is an inclination on the left side, understanding, the feminine. So I think we could put Chovev, the love of Torah, there. You see, you're not really going by the names of the emanations so much, you're going by what they represent. And then we have Yesod, foundation. This is the level where Noah came from, the level of righteousness of Yesod, and Joseph is depicted of Yesod. So Jethro is also the aspect of Yesod, as brought down in Kabbalah. So the name Jethro proper, with the additional Vav to his name, is brought down in Yesod. Leaving the last name, we have the eighth name, Jether. Yud Taf Resh, the Gematria 610, which is the Gematria Yam, or sea. And the level of kingship, or Malchus, the revelation of God, is called a sea. And it's also, the name Jether means extra. And the level of Malchus is really extra, as there are 6 main attributes, and then the 7th is always called the 7th, or the extra last level. So Jether, I think, corresponds to Malchus. Thus, what we have is that the 8 names of Jethro really function as an operative world in its own right. That his names are the attributes that function to perform basically a service to God. That his names are a service to God. Okay, that's that. Now let's get inside and get on our way with Jethro. Okay, so that's what we have. Last week we talked about Jethro and Moses, Shem and Abraham, and we talked about the changes in the world, and the 7 names of Jethro and the attributes. And now let's go deeper. Now what we're going to do is explain what was the nature of this so-called conversion of Jethro. And we're probably not going to get that far into it today, as it's becoming much deeper and deeper the more I get into it, but this will be an ongoing thing. So again, don't expect to have total closure and clarity on the whole topic, but once we have finished and moved on, and whether it be 1 week, 3 weeks, or whatever it is, you'll get it. And when you look in the rearview mirror, we'll have plenty of knowledge of what came out of these next couple classes. So an interesting gematria, or numerical value that I've found, is the gematria of Beis Midrash, the study hall. Now, here we are in the Academy of Shem in Aver. What is that called in Hebrew? It's called a Beis Midrash, a house of study. And I was interested to find out that the numerical value, or gematria, of Jethro and Shem and Jethro, is the value 956, which is the gematria Beis Midrash. Thus, it's the two of them together that really complete and make whole the concept of a Beis Midrash. Now, before we get into the particular Rashis, Rashi is the Bible commentator that explains the Torah. We should explain that there's two aspects to Rashi, but really actually three. Rashi can come to tell you the pshat, which he doesn't do. The pshat is, as we mentioned several times, the simple meaning. Simple meaning doesn't mean simple as in not smart. Simple meaning means that is what it is, was, always will be. When I tell you my name is David Katz, there's no agenda, there's no hidden meaning. It doesn't mean call me Frank. It means my name is David Katz. And it might be profound what I'm saying. It might be that I come from 20 generations of David Katzes, and it's very serious to me. So it's not to take it light. But it just means don't deviate, don't investigate. There's not a hidden agenda. That is what I'm trying to tell you. My name is David Katz. Rashi most times does not come to tell you pshat. Pshat, again, meaning the simple or literal meaning. What Rashi does come to tell you is lafi pshuto, according to its strictness. Now what that really means is, let's say we have a verse in the Torah, and the oral Torah has a certain aspect. Let's say, make this up off the top of my head. The Torah says when you give back a captive of war, return the captive and his blanket. And the oral Torah would say the blanket refers to the clothing of his father. The Torah doesn't say that. So Rashi would come and say, return a captive in his blanket. Blanket is coming to teach you the clothing of his father. Now you would read that and you'd say, man, how does Rashi know that? Where on earth does that come from? I couldn't have learned that. Well, of course you couldn't learn that. You couldn't have learned it because Rashi is telling you what it was learned according to the tradition of the oral law. Thus, there's no way that you could read the Torah and say, oh, that must mean his father's clothing. Impossible. Because if it was possible, that would be pshat, or the simple meaning. And we're saying not the simple meaning. It's not simple at all. You would have to study much literature to derive and find the meaning of the verse. That is what is called the lafi pshuto. So thus there are two possibilities to Rashi. Maybe he's telling you the pshat once in a while. Most of the time he'll tell you lafi pshuto. Now here's what's going to make you tick. Is there lafi pshuto to the words of Rashi's lafi pshuto? Meaning the commentator style of Rashi is written in lafi pshuto. Meaning you have to have background knowledge or ulterior motives inside Rashi. But to the script of Rashi himself, can we or should we learn it lafi pshat, according to its simple meaning of Rashi, meaning what Rashi is literal and easy to understand, or do we say there are actually levels to Rashi? that he is pure and holy and has divine inspiration and a mastery of Hebrew language, that maybe God himself is with Rashi's actions. Now we know when we speak that Hashem is with us, that there's latent meaning in what people say and do. Expressions that we're not even aware of. I would even call it subconscious hints. Thus, would Rashi be a susceptible vessel to bring down the hints of God, thereby making the commentary of Rashi interpretable? And not just interpretable, but positively interpretable. Meaning, did Rashi write his commentary that to extract the depth and meaning at its most sublime levels, you would have to have insight to his commentary? That's the question everybody is posed to answer. How deep does Rashi go? Is he writing for a third grader, which we know that he can be read as a third grade level? Or do we understand the Torah and its commentaries to be written with absolute depth? I choose the latter. I happen to believe, I've seen with my own eyes, that Rashi is incredibly deep, and probably deeper than his own mind would fathom. That when we serve Hashem, anybody that serves God becomes a vessel or chariot to his will or his revelation. This is the idea going back to Shem as well. This is the concept that there really was not to be a holy temple built. Anybody that read my article in the Torah portion Truma and Noahide Nation's website saw the commentary of the Torah, the Sforno, suggests that ideally there would not have been a temple, that we would have been a chariot to the divine presence. And when we say we, I'm saying anybody that basically fulfills the Torah as fit. And Shem was the fulfillment of that concept. That's why with Shem and Abraham at the Temple Mount, there was no temple, yet Michael was enclosed in Shem, as there was a service going on between Shem and Abraham, yet there was no temple built. Thus what we have to say is, when we cater to God in His Torah and His will, and we emanate in the world holiness, Noahide or Jew, do we become a vehicle to bring godliness into the world? The answer is yes. And Rashi was no different, and it's simple to understand that, because Rashi's commentary is printed in every single Torah imaginable today, and that doesn't come by accident. Thus, when we learn the Torah's commentaries, and this is brought down in a commentary also, strangely enough, in the prophets, that the Torah is being extended through generations. So without any more delay, and we have a perspective to view Rashi, we have to ask ourselves, in the commentary about Jethro, if we are not going to view it on a third grade level, because if you view it on a third grade level, it just frankly doesn't make sense. So thereby we bump it up a notch, and we say, what does the Torah really say about Jethro? Okay, so the first thing we have to do, before we get into the Rashis and the commentary, I want to just explain a couple points off the cuff, and then we'll go into the Rashis of Jethro. The question we're going to be constantly confronted with was, Jethro converted, but we don't know what conversion means. Now, generally you would say, well, of course we know what conversion means. It means converted to Judaism. But that's what we would say today. In the year 2012, 5772, any terminology of convert means Judaism. But again, that's today. What about 1,500 years ago? What about 1,000 years ago? What about in the time the Torah was written? Did we lose sensitivity to what the term ger, or convert, actually means? There's a tractate in the Talmud called Nedarim. Strangely enough, it's the tractate that contains the tradition of Malki Tzedek Shem with Abraham. And the highest level of smicha, rabbinical ordained or being ordained, they say that they've lost the tradition of nadarim. Nadarim means oaths, like take an oath. And the reason why they've lost the tradition of nadarim is because the sensitivity to language through the subsequent generations has dwindled to the point of almost obscurity. In the Rishonim, the medieval Bible commentators still possessed a certain level of sensitivity to the Hebrew language. By doing such, they were able to use freely those words. It's like Shakespeare. You should know this. The commentators to the Torah are not textbook authors. They're actually poets, much like Shakespeare. And for whatever reason in the divine will, God brought it about that they're very technical, the commentaries. And people believe they're technical. And people relate to the commentaries that they're technical. But that preserves it on one hand. It is a preservation, yet it preserves it on a third grade level. Our job is to recapture the sensitivity to the language and elevate the language beyond third grade, beyond any grade, and into a poetic response of the Torah. Thus what we have is the Rishonim, which literally means the first ones, the first Bible commentators, they spoke poetically. For example, the Ramban, he'll tell you that the Torah says lo nachon, this is not correct, in a contrast to, let's say, Rashi. But it doesn't mean, oh, you're wrong, lo nachon. It just means it's not there. It's not exactly where we want to go. People today would learn it as not right. Rashi's wrong. But that's not how the Rishonim spoke. So what we understand is that Rashi is speaking in a poetic tongue. And our job is to understand Jethro from a poetic tongue and not a technical tongue. If you want to get technical with Jethro, just say he converted to Judaism and that's the end of it. But this is an avalanche, a snowball effect. Once you start to give in to dogmatic views, well then there's no end to it. And that's when the Noahides, they suffer from it the most. Because they will be the recipient of the dogma. Because the Torah of the Noahide is latent in the most poetic, beautiful language possible. And if you don't connect to the poetry of the Torah, then the Noahide becomes a technical entity. And that's not what the Noahide is. So, for all of time, it's been about the 7 laws, and that's it. Very technical structure, just do the 7 laws. What we're going to connect to is how we can go back to the poetic nature of the Torah, the beauty of the Torah, and ideally reveal from Shem all the way to Jethro to this day the poetic motion of Noahide Torah, the Noahides, and the Noahide history. And we're starting right here with the poetry of Rashi in his commentary to the poetry of Jethro. And the fact is, nowhere does it say anywhere that Jethro converted to Judaism. So we have to ask, if he did not convert to Judaism, yet he is called a convert, how do we resolve the contradiction? And the answer is, did the people who spoke about Jethro as a convert, did they have a different understanding of what a convert was? And they didn't go in to explain the difference, because for them it wasn't a question. Imagine if we had a commentary about a computer today, and you talked about a mouse. And you could say, well, there's 2 kinds of mice. There's the rodent, and there's the computer agent of the mouse. And in the future, let's say the mouse became irrelevant in terms of the computer. And you would say, there's a lot of literature about mice. People would say, no, it was a rodent. It was a rodent. Nowhere would you know that it was actually a hand device used to operate a computer. This is like a parallel truth and a lateral thinking. That Rashi may have had in fact two definitions, yet he didn't perceive the future where the two definitions would be lost and it would be one basic definition of a convert, i.e. to Judaism. Thus, to go back to Rashi's time, we have to suggest that perhaps there are two understandings to the word convert. Convert to Judaism and a convert to something else. And the reason why it's not common is Jethro is really one of a kind. There is only one Jethro. Jethro, as the Rashis will explain, was a convert to Noahidism. And we're going to go into the Rashis and explain how Jethro's life, his names, and everything about Jethro was really an open expression of a post-Shem Sinai experience and actualization of Noahide, basically at Sinai. At Sinai you had the giving of the Torah, you had the Jewish people, and maybe even most importantly, you had the presence of the Noahide nations. Jethro being the representation of the Noahides. Thus he had to leave Mount Sinai. Sinai was the revelation to Moses of the Torah, and the revelation of Moses and Torah is there had to be the concept of Moses receiving the law, delivering the law to the Jewish people bringing the tradition to the world exploring the truth, and the two coming together, repairing schism, which I'll talk about. And that's repairing that schism is the following of 620 laws in the world, which I will again explain how 620, 613 plus 7 correspond to both the Jews and the Noahites. Now basically, the concept of schism works as such. If there is no schism, then there is schism. And if there is schism, then there is the repair of schism. If Moses and Jethro stand in brotherhood at Sinai by the lack of schism, what you have then is a self-shepherded Jewish nation, a self-shepherded Noahide nation, and then you will have two nations in the world that don't rely on each other, go their separate ways, and that does not reflect the unity of God in the world. And in fact, what you would have is a true schism, a split, and it's the antithesis to Torah. Now this is super logic, because how could you think that from no schism brings schism, and from schism brings no schism? This is the concept of the Akedah. And the Paraduma, the red heifer. The red heifer is from impurity you make purity. The binding of Isaac showed that by sacrificing my son, I save my son. Thus, by having schism, by tearing apart the people, that's how they will be glued and come together. So if Jethro and Moses stand together at Sinai, each receiving their commandments, then they're going to go about their ways and never to become together again. Thus, what do we see at the giving of the Torah? Before the Sinai revelation, Moses sends off Jethro, and Jethro goes. They openly do schism. By openly evoking schism, the table is now set and ready that the revelation will come down, and Jethro can then come back as a Sinai Noahide into the Jewish camp, which we'll get to in the commentary in the book of Numbers or Bamidbar. There we have the beginning of the repair of schism. And as the generations will go on and on and on, the Noahides and the Jews from schism will become united. But had they united, it would not have been an actual unification, and they would have been split. And what does the prophet Ezekiel say? The wood of Joseph and the wood of Judah will become one in my hand. From schism comes unity. When the Jews came out of Egypt, as a side note, the Erev Rav did not receive either the Noahide tradition or the Jewish tradition. This is brought in the first 3 verses of Bamidbar, Numbers, that when the Jewish people received their names and gematriot of their names, numerical values, this was to the exclusion of the Erev Rav. They were a level of convert to Judaism, but not a true convert. And since they had no aspect of a name, which we're going to get into now, they were not Noahides either. The Erev Rav were the mixed multitude to the Jewish people, I would call that a quasi-convert. They didn't convert to Noahide, didn't convert totally to the Torah, yet they were just quasi. Now what we're saying by Jethro, now that he had to leave Sinai, so that the mission of the Torah would be able to be served, thus repairing the schism, the gematria Vayishlach Moshe, and Moses sent off, i.e. Jethro, is the gematria of Para Aduma, the red heifer. Now why are we mentioning the red heifer? Again, the law of the red heifer is, it removes the impurity of death. But when you prepare the red heifer, it actually makes you impure. Thus, it's one of those incredible things to understand. From impurity comes purity. From schism comes the repair of schism. This is represented by Moses sending off Jethro. Three more points we'll bring up. 2 people in the history of the world said Baruch Hashem. And we're going to make a comparison between those 2 people. Noah said Baruch Hashem, and Jethro said Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem, in a certain respect, may even be on par with Shema Yisrael. The Jewish, let's say, mantra, or call of unity, is Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Noah brings down and Jethro confirms by saying Baruch Hashem is a declaration of God. That's also going to be a theme that we're going to talk about, probably not today, but when we get to it next week, how the Jew says Shema as representation of God's unity in the world, and the Noahide, I think it has an understanding to say Baruch Hashem. One second. Somebody asked a question. I'll address the question at the end of class. Okay. Now, the interesting point, the gematria or numerical value Baruch Hashem is the same gematria as Od Yosef Chai. Yosef still lives. When Jacob thought that Joseph died, he was brought back to life, Jacob, when he understood, Od Yosef Chai, Joseph still lives. By saying Joseph still lives, it brought almost a resuscitation of the dead, the Chias HaMesim, that something that was deemed as dead actually came back to life. And this is really I would say this is essential to Noahides. They've been around since Shem. They were at Sinai. always in the world, and when we have the revelation of a Noahide in the world, they rejected everything where they came from. They come to Baruch Hashem, the acknowledgement of God. You'd say, "Oh, Yosef Chai, he still lives. This tzaddik, righteous person still lives." And it's a tremendous sanctification of God, that from the darkness of the world emerges light. 2 more points to talk about. Moses sat and learned from Jethro, his father-in-law. That there's an aspect that even Moses, who was the father-in-law, who had a father-in-law of Jethro, Moses gave us the Torah, yet the Torah says Vayeshiv, and he sat, which is the academy, or learned. That Moses learned equally from Jethro, his father-in-law. And then the point we're going to get on to now, I think we have enough background information to get into this. Jethro's name changed. His name went from Jether to Jethro. And a vav was added to his name. And what we're saying is, when Jethro converted, whatever converted means, we're going to say he converted to Sinai Noahide. It says that they added a vav to his name. Now, what does it mean, they? And what does it mean that they added a vav to his name, the letter vav in Hebrew? Jethro, when he converted, the word for when he converted is, I'll tell you the word, which we're going to focus on. It's the Rashi in chapter 18:1 of Exodus, Shemos. Yitro lichshenit gayer v'kiyam mitzvahs hosifulolo os achas oshemo. Jethro, when he was converted and preserved the laws, they added to him 1 letter onto his name. So what we're going to say is, he had to convert. Jethro could not stay the way he was. He was an onus under duress of God. When he said Baruch Hashem, he was forced to acknowledge God. There was no more idolatry. There was no more searching for anywhere other than the Torah. This is why he's called Chovav, the beloved. He loved the Torah. Jethro was shown the truth, found the truth, searched for the truth, found the truth. He was converted. If I showed you right now the world of Atzilus, you would be converted too, to whatever it is that you would be converted to. You would be absolutely following the path of God perfectly. If we saw anything that true, you would be in the mold of the word convert. You know, if I told you that whatever you reveal is truth, when you have the absolute truth revealed, that is a conversion. You are no longer what you were. So for when he was converted, that's the word for when the Torah says by Rashi, literally when he converted. Don't view it literally. Take Rashi Lefi Pshuto. Understand it with depth and meaning. For when he was converted and he preserved the laws, they added to him 1 letter onto his name. What we see here is he had the letter added to his name. Something changed. He didn't just say, you know what, I'm a Noahide. I believe in God. There was something more official, and that's what Sinai represents. Shem and Abraham, before Sinai, Abraham wasn't obligated in 613 laws. And Shem was a practicing Noahide, the forefather both to the Torah, Judaism, everything, but it wasn't, let's say, law binding. Even though they held the law and they acted within the law, there's a certain level of being he who does and he who is being commanded and does. Whether or not you think you're commanded before Sinai, it doesn't change the fact that you are commanded after Sinai. The reason why he got a vav added to his name is the vav corresponds to the level of yesod, foundation. which the root soul of Jethro is to connect to the level of righteousness of Yesod. And there's many reasons why he got the Vav to his name. Mainly the Vav represents the true spiritual nature in a most simple expressed terms to Jethro. Thus, what he did was he acted upon the conversion of Sinai. Sinai was a conversion process. But you have to make an action to make it chal, to make it activated. So what does Jethro do? He adds a vav to his name. Thus, it's an acquisition. It's a kinyan. And what a kinyan means acquisition in Hebrew. And remember, his name means Caini. And Caini comes from Cain. And Cain is Cain. And Cain literally means acquisition. Now that we have Cain, acquisition, Jethro. Jethro is a reincarnation of Cain. He understands there must be an acquisition. There must be an action of acquisition. You can't just, if something is, this is why money comes in the world. You can't just have everything for free. You have to be commanded and do to bring out the greatness. Jethro understands this, and he adds the vav to his name. He's not Jether, he's Jethro. And the name Jethro is a perfect name. The vav at the end explains everything about him. An extra Torah portion, the level of righteousness, or Yesod in Kabbalah, his reincarnation to Cain, everything about him, having a letter from Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, Hashem's name in his name, the masculine entity of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, the Vav of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, everything is in that Vav. It's almost on the level of a perfectly good concept. It's just a good concept, what he did. It's not one thing in particular. The Vav to his name is just expresses what he did. So he makes an acquisition, and then it says they gave him an extra letter to his name. Who's they? I looked at this. Who's they? It says Hosifu. They added a letter to his name. And the answer is we don't know. We don't know who they are. Basically, it was Jethro and somebody else. More than one, probably. This is called edus, witness, testimony. Look at the Shema. Shema, the word Shema, Shin Mem Ayin, Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Look at the word Echad, one, Aleph Chet Dalid. Shema and Echad. Listen to Shema, ends with the word Echad, one. Shem, of the word Shema. Ach, of the word Echad, spells brother Shem. And the last letters of Shema and Echad spell aid, witness. Put the word Shema and Echad together, brother Shem is the witness. Shem being the first Noahide, Shem himself changes his name. He's no longer Shem. He's Malki Tzedek. Where do we see anybody in today's world named Malki Tzedek? You don't. Where do we see people today named Jethro? You don't. Noahide names to Noahide souls, Noahide action. And the Noahide is the father of the Torah in Shem, and the giver of the Torah in the Torah, Parshas Yisro. Torah and the Noahides are synonymous. Did they convert to Judaism? No. Did they help create and find the Torah in Judaism? Yes. Each one of them, Jethro and Shem, changed their name and represent a testimony or witness. They added one letter to his name. There was a testimony. Jethro did not just say, I believe and I'm done. He said, Baruch Hashem. He identified God on the level of having divine revelation. He basically saw God. He saw the truth. He saw a revelation. Shem did the same thing. Thus, for Yisro, there's no aspect of Shema Yisrael. If he would have said to Moses, Shema Yisrael, like Jacob's son said to Jacob at the time of the unification, then Jethro should have said, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. But he didn't. He said, Baruch Hashem. Blessed is God. Thank God. That means that Jethro sees God. And what does Moses tell Jethro? We're going to leave off here, and next week we'll pick up. Moses tells Jethro, don't forsake us, for you are our eyes. The Jewish people are lacking vision in the eye. Jethro is like an eyeball of Israel. Moses tells him through the words of Rashi. Jethro is the vision of the nation. Jethro is the vision of Torah. Shem first had the vision. Jethro swore on the vision. Now I'm not using the word oath as in swearing. I'm saying he did an action. He added a letter to his name. He literally changed his name, had witnesses. He became a law-abiding Noahide at Sinai. The Jewish people became on one level on Sinai. Jethro took his. There was a schism, and repairing the schism is where we are today and for all of time. That's that tekufa, or time period, that comes out from Abraham and Shem, kindness and Torah, Jethro and Moses, the mitzvahs, commandments on the level of kind deeds and Torah. Thus, by connecting to what came from Abraham, Shem, through Moses and Jethro, that is the connection of good in the world. Those four represent the totality of how to basically live in the world today, through change and through evil. And the rest of the characters in the Torah can surround their characters in a certain respect. It's not to say they're the most four essential. There's balance. Abraham and Shem, Jethro and Moses. It's the schism to repair schism. It's the way to cling to the world in the most basic blueprint model. Jethro is a blueprint. Moses is a blueprint. Abraham and Shem laid down the law as a point in time. Moses and Jethro are the extension that we can look to today as how to live Sinai even today. That's it for this week. Now we're starting to understand Jethro pretty well, I believe. And next time we're going to get into the Rashis. I promise this time I did all my background work. Next time we're going to get into the Rashis and explain the Noahides, the Jews, in the light of Moses and Jethro. This was the 17th installment. Please don't hesitate to review. The concepts, as I've told you, are all the time recycling. And anybody that has any feedback of what you can think of the 7 attributes would be for Jethro's names, prepare them, try your own. Maybe you'll have a chiddush or an innovation, a novelty. Make the Torah your own. See what you can find. Jethro's 7 names, the 7 traits, the quasi-eighth. And Jethro the convert. Did he convert to Judaism? Did he convert to Noahide? And we'll explore in the Rashis next time, showing that all arrows point to his true conversion. And again, what did Jethro do? He enacted his incarnation of Cain, which is acquisition. He acquired the Noahide rights through Baruch Hashem, name change, and the testimony. Following suit with Shem, who did the same essentially, and Abraham's second wife Hagar became Keturah. Thus we see the precedent in the Torah that Jethro was the Sinai version of. Thank you very much. See you next time. Have a great week.